I've been in IT leadership for over 35 years, and I started the series after working with someone who I've been mentoring for quite a while, who went through a few years of being harassed at work. Very talented person, performer, but still being harassed. So that's the reason why I started this series. So in this session, what I'd like to cover is know what you're accountable for and make sure that you're documenting everything. This is very foundational. It may not seem, this topic may not seem like a strategy on how to handle workplace bullying or harassment, but it's extremely important. It's kind of one-on-one. Everything you do is going to be based on this. So this can't be skipped. If you're not being harassed and you're just kind of curious, this is stuff that you need to do. It's great from a professional growth standpoint as well. It Everyone should be doing this. So in the first session, I covered a few things. One is discussing that bullying and harassment is very real. It impacts everybody. Everybody who works for any length of time is going to encounter it at different levels. You're going to be harassed or bullied. It's typically the most talented people that are targeted, and I like to use the word targeted and not victim, because victim sounds like you're diminished. You're not, because you are probably an extremely talented person, and that's the reason why you're getting targeted. And we did discuss four types of bullies. Now, bullies and people who harass people will use all different kinds of tactics, so nobody fits into one category. But I did go through it so that we can come up with strategies really on how to address them. So I'll put the link in the comments so that you can refer to part one. So diving right in, you really need to know what you're accountable for. And this is going to sound boring, but read your employee handbook. It's super important. Make sure that you fully understand what's in there. And specifically read the portion of your handbook on how you as the employee need to report any sort of bullying and harassment, because you need to adhere to that completely. Now, HR, and I'll talk about this more, HR isn't your friend. Everything you say to HR, regardless of what they verbally say to you, everything you say to them is on the record. There are no off the record conversations. They're going to copy whatever you say. They're going to repeat whatever you say. So there's no confidence there. There's certainly no lawyer confidentiality with them. They are there to protect the company. They're looking to protect the company against you and potentially the bully. So be aware of that. So I would right now make sure that you know where your handbook is and start to read it. Read it during lunch. Read it if you have an office or a cubicle. Read it there. If you can make a copy of it and bring it home and read it, I would read it there. But now, today, make sure, typically they're not that big, but go through it and make sure you understand the process. You may not be able to make a copy, but if you can't read it in the office, don't be too conspicuous about it. Try to read it, don't take it to, if you have a cafeteria, don't take it there and read it. Read it somewhere a little bit private. You don't want people knowing that you're going through it, but you definitely want to go through it and understand what's in there. If you have any questions on process, you're going to need to ask HR, because you need to make sure that you're following it. So if you don't do this, if you don't follow their process, any gap in adherence in HR's process, in your company's process, is going to be your fault, and they're going to look at that as a performance issue. So that's pretty serious, and I've seen that happen many times where the employee doesn't follow the process. They skip, they don't inform HR of a problem that's occurring, and it comes back on them, and next thing they know, they're being terminated or they're having some sort of disciplinary taken against them. That's not what you want. If you're going to seek counsel, and if you're being harassed, I would definitely think about reaching out to a lawyer. You probably want to share them the employee handbook if you're allowed. Now, a good lawyer will ask you, am I allowed to see it? Am I allowed to have a copy of it? And it should say it in the employee handbook. If it doesn't say it, the lawyer, you can check with the lawyer to see if you can just give them a copy of it. They'll want to see that. But you want to protect yourself because nobody else is going to be protecting you. The next thing that's very foundational, may seem boring, is you have to document everything. It's a good habit to get into anyway. So whether you're being harassed or not, but if you're being harassed, this is super important. So get in the habit of taking notes at every meeting, whether it's a group meeting, a project meeting, presentations, definitely for any one-on-one meeting. If you're having a one-on-one meeting with your boss, if you're having a one-on-one meeting with that person who's harassing you, if you're having a one-on-one meeting with anyone who works for you, you need to be taking notes. Take notes all the time. I have a nice hard-covered notebook just because it looks nice and professional. You can get a notepad from the dollar store. I guess it costs $1.25 nowadays, but you could use that. Just make sure that you always have a notepad, a notebook. I recommend a notebook over a notepad, something where you're not ripping out pages. So you've got a good record, and a pen in your hand all the time. You want people to see you with that. You want people to feel comfortable that, yep, every time this person shows up, they've got a notepad and they're taking notes. It's a good thing for them to see professionally, number one. And number two, if you're taking notes to record, to track when you're being harassed, the person who's harassing you is going to be used to seeing you take notes. So it's not going to be an exception. You're not just showing up whenever you're meeting with them with a notepad. And as part of that, if you're taking notes, why take notes unless if you're going to send out the notes in minutes? Now, next slide, I'm going to talk about what notes you take and what you send out. But no matter what meeting you're in, you're going to send out notes. Definitely for one-on-one meeting, whether you're the lead in that one-on-one meeting or not, you're going to send out notes, and I'll talk about that. Same thing with all the other meetings, especially if you're the lead of the team or the group meeting. You want to send out notes. That way, meeting notes, and it is something good at the end of the day to go back. If you have a lot of meetings, you go back and you look at all of your meetings and you send out notes for them. So it goes for project meetings, group meetings, one-on-one meetings, any sort of meeting. Now, you may be sending out notes if you're running the meeting or minutes, but if you're not, you still want to send out notes, and you want to do it appropriately. What I tend to do is either I'll send out, hey, this is my understanding of whatever happened at the meeting, whatever I'm accountable for, whatever we discussed. Or if minutes already went out, I'll look at it and I'll look for gaps and say, hey, just wanted to say that I also have these as notes. That way they see that you're following up. A good thing about taking the notes is that people will start to rely on you at the end of the day because you're taking notes and you're going to send out notes. They'll start to rely on you, and that's a good thing professionally. So what do you document? Attendance, who's there, time, date, location, very important, and the discussions that you had. You definitely want to discuss the topics. Now, in your personal notes that you're taking, so in your notepad, you're definitely going to document how people reacted. Did somebody get upset? Did somebody raise their voice? Did somebody use unprofessional words? Did they curse? Were they derogatory? Anything like that. Then any sort of agreements, timelines, resource commitments, or requirements, and deadlines. Absolutely need to take care of documenting those. And inappropriate behavior. Did anybody really act out in the meeting? So you take all those notes. What do you send out though? And I'm not talking about to HR. I'm not talking about specifically regarding your harassment or your bullying, but because you're taking notes and you're sending them out on an ongoing basis, what do you send out? You send out the attendance, the time, the date, the location, the topics that were discussed, And from a project and a work related perspective, the agreements, the timelines, the resources, the deadlines, you don't want to send out any of the behavioral, the inappropriate discussion. You want to keep what you're sending out on an ongoing basis professional. So keep it work related to keep the work moving forward. So if I'm doing that, why am I doing that? How is this going to help me regarding me being bullied? So number one, it's going to establish some credibility as a record taker. It's great for professional development. That increases your credibility. And when harassment does occur, if you have already a track record of taking notes and you're including that harassment into your notes, it's a document trail that's really going to help you. Now, I was only in court once regarding an employee issue, and it had to do with unemployment, not harassment. But that person had their notebook, and they took pretty good notes. I wouldn't give them an A, I'd give them a C plus or a B minus. But even so, that notebook was handed over to the judge. Judge believed them 100% because they had their notes. Now, I happen to have agreed with the employee and it matched my notes. I didn't share mine, but that went a long way. So Tim, the person who I have been mentoring, took this a step further. Now he was getting gaslit. He was meeting with HR, he was meeting with his management, and what was coming out of those meetings from them were notes that was different than what was being discussed, including what he said. Now he'd get notes back and he'd get documents back and stating that he said something and he never said it. So you start to go a little bit crazy when you've got all this stress and pressure on you and they're attacking you. And he's got an interesting situation. It went on for years, and that his harassment was part of the company culture, which is possible. I don't think it's typical, but it is very possible. Some companies are just that way. So what he decided was, I'm going to record all of my meetings. So what he did was, first thing he did, and I'm not a lawyer, so don't take my word for this, he spoke to a lawyer. He spoke to his lawyer, and he's in New York State, and the lawyer said, yes, you could record any discussion, any conversation that you have. One person needs to know about the recording. Everybody doesn't need to know about it. So my assumption is that law is in place just so that you're not recording other people, but you can record yourself having a discussion with somebody else. So what he did was, after that, he met with an HR manager on another issue, and he was already having his notepad in front of him, pen in hand. People were used to seeing that. And he asked and I heard this on the recording, he asked the HR manager, so I should record every meeting I have. And he asked that 3 times of the HR manager, and each time the HR manager said yes. Matter of fact, at the end of the meeting, the HR manager said, make sure you record every conversation. So that way, he not only had it in his notes, he had a recording of HR telling him to record it. So he never shared that with anybody other than his lawyer. But he was able to replay it so that his notes and his responses to anything that happened was 100% accurate. Not only on what he said, what other people said, the tone. It went a long way to helping him. Something to consider. Not everyone's comfortable with that, but it worked out very well for Tim. So my goals for this session, and hopefully we nailed it, is ensure you're delivering on the company's expectation. You need to read that handbook. That is a condition of your employment. So make sure you're following that process that HR has for reporting issues. And remember, HR is not your friend. They may not be evil. They're humans, but they're there to protect the company. And you need to make sure you're in compliance with their process. A lot of times they have you sign the handbook to agree to it. But even if you don't sign it, it's a condition of employment. And the other thing is make sure you document everything. It's a good professional habit, but it's going to go a long way to help you in working through any of these issues, either with HR. It's going to help you with the person who's harassing you, and it's certainly going to help you with your lawyer. So I hope this was helpful. We'll have future sessions, and I'll put the links into the comment section.